Hello and welcome to the Flourishing Introvert Talks with me, Jo Rawbone. This is the podcast that celebrates the natural gifts of introverts so that we can flourish in all situations. Episode 294, The Cost of Staying. Have you ever actually, or at least considered, walking away from a job, not because you had something better lined up, but because you'd reached the point where you simply couldn't stay? Some might call it brave, others reckless, and yet many of we introverts would probably acknowledge it as being necessary. Necessary for our health, for our well-being, for our very sanity. So in this episode, I'll be unpacking why introverts sometimes choose to hand in their notice even when they have no safety net, no job to go to. There's a beautiful quote from John Burroughs that I often use, which is, "Leap and the net will appear." That takes an enormous amount of self-trust or an intolerable amount of frustration, and maybe both. Yet I've known several people do just that over the last few months. And they did it at a time when many will be job hugging, thinking, just stick it out, the job market is too shaky right now. But for each of us, there comes a tipping point when the consequences of staying outweigh the risk of leaping, and not in a good way. Staying may be familiar, but not fulfilling. Is that really how you want to live your life? Leaping may well be scary, but that keeps us on our toes rather than on our arses and frustrated as... All of the research says that there's so much similarity between fear and excitement that I say it's gotta be worth the adventure. The contents of this episode are as much for we introverts who are being nudged towards the decision as it is for leaders who know how important it is to hold on to their valuable talent. Take heed of these points and, where possible, change your practice so that people aren't leaving because of you. What I'm sharing here is the distilled essence from the experience of my contacts who've taken the bold step and the thoughts of others who have considered it. In the cases of the people I know, it came down to a real test of moral fortitude. Something remarkable happens when you look yourself squarely in the mirror and ask yourself the tough questions. Whilst that made the decision no less scary for them, they absolutely knew it was the right thing to do, and for more than themselves. In fact, the most common factor when we catch up again is how they wished they'd done it much earlier. Their bold move marked the beginning of an authentic chapter of their life in which they could really flourish. There is an age-old saying, which is that people join organisations and leave managers, and there's more than a semblance of truth in that. Yet it's not the whole picture. The trouble starts when those in positions of authority resort to managing headcount, so the what people are doing, rather than managing them as human beings. This is particularly relevant at the moment as organisations look to cut costs rather than doing the more challenging work of improving processes, which impacts the underlying morale and engagement. I've talked about it before, and you'll no doubt have experienced it, that pressure to do more faster and with less. This is simply performative busyness masquerading as real productivity. This impacts introverts more than other personality types, as we're criticised, demonised even, for needing to take time to think, to evaluate and to make informed decisions. But I think we can all agree that we're now suffering the consequences of hasty decision-making in order to appear that we're making progress. Promises that cannot be met just add to the weakening of trust and credibility. Back in 2022, I first saw the term quiet quitting, and it resonated deeply with me as I've witnessed it time and time again. Introverts are not renowned for flouncing out or making a dramatic exit. So for most of us, the whole process of leaving starts with quiet quitting, the subtle disengaging. That decision to withdraw our goodwill, to work our contracted hours and do the bare minimum, just enough to keep us out of trouble, but no more. This is rarely an easy decision to take, and it is even more difficult to implement. When we choose to leave, it's after months, years even, of micro-betrayals and micro-aggressions, leaving us beyond frustrated at being overlooked and undervalued. Like watching Jane get the promotion you went for, knowing that she's just a blagger and will be asking you for help before the first week is out. Like being told that if you would just speak up more in the weekly meeting, you'd be taken more seriously. Haven't they noticed that just 2 words in, you're interrupted by Dean? Every single time. And like being ridiculed because you prefer to get home to the family rather than going out boozing after work. They clearly don't understand that giving your all during the day isn't replenished by a pint or two and mindless chat. All of that causes us to retreat into ourselves and exist in survival mode, which doesn't sit comfortably at all. In fact, it's usually the straw that causes quiet quitting to become quiet leaving. Many of us pride ourselves in our work ethic, even if it's not always recognised by the decision makers. We have typically gone the extra mile so often that we're eligible for multiple Ironman medals. Just think about the impact of quiet quitting and quiet leaving. Teams lose the deep thinkers, the reflectors, the ones who steady chaos. Creative energy dissipates, engagement wanes, and morale weakens. What's left is noise without depth. When people don't feel valued for who they are, for their unique contribution, or are not encouraged to pursue what they're capable of, who they are becoming, organisations stagnate. And that's exactly what they deserve to do. So what do you do when you find yourself caught between these well-known places of a rock and a hard place? What you need is a reality check and an evidence trail. If the pattern repeats, that's valuable data. Here are a few strategies to consider, and as ever, you do what's right for you, as long as it's not playing safe for the wrong reasons. We only get one crack at this life, after all. Number 1, get radically honest with yourself. This entails undertaking a complete drains up on everything you do with your current role and situation. What is draining you? What is nourishing you? And what leaves you feeling meh? Insider tip, look in all of the corners and the unusual places. This deserves thoroughness. Number 2, validate your observations from number 1 by keeping a daily record of your mental and emotional battery levels, and in particular what behaviours or incidents are the catalysts. That way, you not only see the patterns clearly, you can also develop tactics that either limit the damage or maximise the benefits. Number 3, work out what you really need to feel psychologically safe and establish ways to get those needs met. If it's not possible where you currently are, you're a step closer to knowing the decision you need to make. Number 4, reframe quitting so you acknowledge it as essential boundary management rather than failing. Failure is staying put for the wrong reasons, because for decent human beings, there is no amount of money or status that will compensate for working unethically. Number 5, finally anchor your move in the clarity of what you're moving towards rather than away from. towards goals and intentions are always more grounded and positive than taking action out of desperation because you can't take something anymore. That way is a little too frying pan and fire for my liking. There's one thing being brave enough to leap, believing a net will appear, but do remember that knowing what you're going towards gives you the direction in which to leap. Away from or escaping something means that leaping in any direction will do, but that's unlikely to serve you well unless it's a life or death situation. Now, I do need to say that certainty is an elusive component of life. I know people who have moved hundreds of miles to take up a new job only to be made redundant a few months later. I know people who have accepted a job offer, handed in their notice, only for the new job to be withdrawn. I know people who jumped but without the required clarity, and their net was flimsy beyond belief. So there are no guarantees in life, but that is no reason to job hug. That's the term for staying put for all the wrong reasons. You suffer, your colleagues suffer, and your work suffers. Better to decide a direction, make a plan, and leap. Yes, it can feel disconcerting, but you'll find out more about yourself in that moment and those that follow than staying where you are but remaining unfulfilled. Moving on from somewhere that you are not valued is not running away. It's returning to yourself and gravitating towards what's meant for you. It's moving towards a more consistent state of flourishing because you've chosen a path that enables your frustrations to decrease. It's what I enable people to do on their personalised frustrated to flourishing journey. They have my support for 12 months, enabling them to make informed choices, take relevant actions, and shape their new environment. There are plenty of resources to access in the meantime, and it all starts with a conscious choice. We cannot flourish in places that shrink us, but we can choose to influence where we stand. Whether you shape culture in an organisation or are only responsible for yourself and your loved ones, remember, quiet strength is contagious when practiced consistently. Choose the path that grows you, not the path that drains you. If you enjoyed this episode as much as I did, then please subscribe, rate us and leave a comment, because we know that helps other people find the podcast. And if other people find us, other introverts can flourish.
You are listening to an Intentional Media Production podcast.